Okay, so we created a job before, another tutorial. I'm going to make some changes here to the spec that's in that job. Edit job spec setup. Now this is something that probably your supervisor would do rather than the operator. So it depends on what your position in this task is going to be. So I'm going to pick the carbo to edit this spec, and we're going to try a bit of socket weld piping. Normally, or a lot of places, your socket weld piping will be the smaller piping, probably depending on where you are, 2" and below or 1.5" and below. And socket welds are a lot cheaper to fabricate, so they're popular for the lower pressure, lower specs. So here, click on inspection here. This is something that we didn't do on the last job that we could have done. So inspection, this is going to be your X-ray. Now this is going to apply to everything. You're probably not going to be doing X-ray on your socket weld, although that's not always true. Sometimes they want to socket X-ray the gap. So these are things that your specification or the company you're working for would decide for you. You put whatever notes you wanted in there. Spec weld procedures, the company would have determined that. Walls and ratings, generally this would probably be extra strong in most specs. So if we want, we can change that to extra strong. Or if you want, you can clear all that. Everything below what's the size you click will become that. And again, this is probably something your supervisor would do rather than you. And your fitting walls would match your pipe. Pipe and fitting choices. Most places are not going to be drawing threaded fittings in their shop drawings, but some would. Cross is very uncommon. You can see all your options here. Fabrication drawings. We go in here, we can put in the job information. This is all stuff that's done at the beginning of the job, and you wouldn't have to bother with it after that. Okay, so that's some spec setup stuff. So we're going to go in here. Now, if your design pressures and information is the same on every drawing, or it's going to be similar, what you can do, you can relabel a drawing, but that's can be a little bit dangerous because you might overwrite a drawing that's already there. So maybe it would be better if we start out fresh. So again, we can locate our starting point with the arrow keys. Want to go on diagonals, you can use the keypad 1, 9, 7, or 3 to run on angles, or 2, 8, 4, or 6 to go horizontally, vertically. You can change your location later, but just a general starting point you pick. Once you're happy with that, you press enter. And now it's asking what direction we want to go. We say down. Because this is a completely new drawing, it's asking us which of the specs in the job we want to use. I select that one by clicking the left mouse button. And I'm going to draw in socket weld, so I'm going to start with 1.5" because 2" and above will be butt weld. And again, I'm going to start with a socket weld. It says here socket weld threaded flange, so both options are going to be there when you pick that. So now I'm going to pick socket weld. And I can hold the shift button, up arrow to increase the size, or down arrow to decrease the size of that flange. Reducer. Generally, your fittings are all going to have plain ends in socket weld piping. Now, I don't see a plain both ends swedge here, which is what I wanted. So I can go and add that to my spec now without leaving the drawing, and go Tools, Specification, Edit Current Spec. And then I can go into Pipe and Fitting Choices. Swedge will be under Reducers. Sometimes what where you would expect it to be, like under socket weld threaded reducers, you'll find the item you're looking for is actually under the Buttweld items. So here I'm looking for a plain both end concentric swedge. So if I click that, that'll then be offered to me in future in this spec. Save, close, close. Yes, okay. Now another thing I could have done if I didn't want to add it to the spec is just go Edit Off-spec and say all fitting choices. And then for that one command, it would be offered to me. But now I've added it to the spec, it'll be in there permanently. And again, I pick Reducer, and you can see now it's added the plain both end concentric swedge as one of my choices. And so I've started 1.5 inches. I'm going to go to 1 inch now. That swedge ideally would fit inside the socket of the flange or close to it. So I can increase or decrease my size. And again, I can hit space bar if I want to change the orientation. With socket weld fittings, you need to be going into a socket generally. So if I'm going to draw some pipe after this, I can't just draw a pipe off the swedge according to most of the specifications. I'd have to pick a coupling. Okay, this isn't set up. So again, I can go Tools, Specification, Edit Current Spec, Pipe and Fitting Choices, Reducers, Couplings, Socket Weld Coupling. Okay, save. Okay, now when I pick coupling, socket weld coupling is an option there. And I'm going to draw some pipe. I'm going to go with a 90-degree elbow, which I can orient at 90-degree increments by hitting spacebar. And if I've gone through all those choices and I'm not happy, I just continue pressing spacebar, and it adds in 45-degree increments to my choices. And then when I'm happy with the choice, I press enter. It's now asking me for a dimension. And up here it shows me what those fittings add up to without pipe. I'm just going to say 12 inches is my overall dimension. And you see it subtracted the fittings, and it's determined I need 5 7/8 worth of pipe to get an overall dimension of 12 inches. Pipe, pipe. Because there's socket weld elbows, I don't need a coupling to do that. Say I wanted to go from socket weld to a butt weld size. I have to put my coupling in here. And now when I pick reducer, I'll see what my choices are. What I'm looking for is a beveled large, plain, small end reducer, which is not there. So I'm going to go Tools, Specification, Edit Current Spec. pipe and fitting choices, reducers. I'm going to look for beveled plain, or beveled large, plain small. Here's an eccentric, but I'm looking for a concentric. There it is there. You can see that the titles on these don't always accurately describe what's inside. Let's say I'm going to go to 3-inch. And now when I pick a 90-degree elbow, because I set in my spec that 1.5 inches and below is socket weld, it knows that 2-inch and above is going to be butt weld. So it's automatically chosen a butt weld elbow for me. I'm going to hold shift and up arrow just to make that elbow look a little bigger. You don't have to do that. Some companies don't really care. Most companies wouldn't care. Okay, so now I'm drawing in 3-inch. And if I were to draw a pipe, I wouldn't need a coupling because you don't need couplings with butt weld piping. Okay, so now if I go File, Resave, it says Resave, but it's actually the first time I'm saving it. So it knows that I've already used J1, so I'm changing it to J2. But just be careful there. It'll give you a warning if you're starting to overwrite a drawing. Always be careful if it's warning you that drawing already exists, as many a times drawings have been overwritten by accident. So pay attention to any warnings it gives. Now, that's a little uncentered. So I can go Edit, select all of the above. And again, with my arrow keys, I can move it. By pressing 5 on the keyboard, I can make the moves bigger or smaller. And if I want to move the dimension line a little bit, I just click on the arrowhead. If I want to change what the dimension says, I click on the center of the dimension. Okay. So the cut length there is 2'10" 3/4, and it's chosen 150-pound flanges in this spec. The overall length is 3'6". So let's see what happens if I want to delete that flange. Perhaps I meant to put a 300-pound flange there, not a 150, because I want it to go off spec. If I use F11, see it becomes a hand here, the cursor. So I can click on that item, click on the item bubble. You don't have to click on the flange, click on the item bubble, and then hit delete on your keypad. Now I'm going to go edit off spec, and I can change any of these things so that I will be prompted on the next command for what I want that's not per spec. So in this case, I'm going to change the flange rating. Say done. Now when I click there and I pick weld neck flange, it's asking me what rating I want because it knows I'm going off spec. I'm going to say 300 pound. Okay, so it's retained the cut length, but it's increased the overall dimension. So be careful there. If you do that, what I've just shown you there, it's going to keep the cut length the same, but your overall dimension is going to increase. So if you really did want the dimension you put in there originally, you'll have to change that to whatever you had originally. And myself, if I got 2 different flange ratings on the drawing and it's out of spec, it helps to bring it to the attention of the guy in the shop. Again, each company will probably have preferences on how they want to do these things. For the swedge, I could call that out. Again, I move it with the keypad when it's in this state. And I can hold shift and increase or decrease the size of the text while it's in this state. I like to save my drawing once in a while, just in case things go bad. So I did the note by just right-clicking on the screen somewhere and choosing Note. You could also call out the size of that reducer by going Tools, Label Item, Add Size Label. And then when I click on that item, it'll automatically come in with the size. In some cases, you might have to move things. F12 doesn't always move it. It seems to work with these notes if you want to move them. But the note that was put in by the computer, first I'm going to move this bubble out of the way. Tools, Move Tag. Seems like the notes the computer put it in. I had to hold Control and left mouse click to get that to come up. So sometimes it's easier just to type the text in. Now let's just say I'm putting a branch on this. Socket-weld branch. (18 inches), or I could type 1'6". Now if I was to go 1'-6", see this change to the word calculate. So it's going to subtract 6 inches from 1 foot if I put that dash in there, okay? If I put 1'6" without the dash, it'll accept that. So let's just say I had some long calculation. I could say 1'7" plus 3 space 3. No, I don't want to do this slash 3 point. So then it can calculate. Well, let's just say I'm going to add 3 inches. So it calculated that, accept. Okay, because I'm still in edit off spec with the flange rating, it's still asking me. Edit off spec. I'm going to take that off. Or I could just say all on spec, but anyway. So now it won't ask me the flange rating anymore. Now, if I hit F11, I can select certain items that I want to move. In this case, I'm going to move them diagonally with the number 9 on the keypad. And then press enter when I'm satisfied with that move. And if I was going to draw this so it came down, say I just wanted to for some reason. Isometric drawings are not to scale, so you don't really have to do that, but I'm just going to show you something. So if I had lines crossing like that, and I wanted to break this line here, I can click on that line and say break pipe. So my second click is going to be where the other end of the break is, okay? And then if I didn't like that, I can click on the line again, say unbreak pipe. F11. Break pipe. Okay, but actually in most cases you probably wouldn't bother with that. You'd just have this showing up here. Now say on this elbow here, most common way is to do what's called a dummy leg or a stanchion. So I click on that elbow, pipe dummy leg. Now here's my choices. I can have a dummy leg is just going to be a chunk of pipe that's welded to that elbow. I got a 3-inch elbow. I can either have that dummy leg come with its elevation the same height as that elbow, or with the elevation of the bottom of the dummy leg the same as the bottom of the elbow. Say I'm going to make it so the bottom of the pipe is the same. I'd go dummy leg outside flush and make it one size smaller than the elbow perhaps. Depends on the spec. So this pops up. Looks a little small. I'm going to shift, make it bigger. Press enter. If I'm satisfied there, then I click joint, okay? I know there's no joint, but that's what you do to get a dimension to come in there. And plane end, in this case. Now I got a dummy leg that's 3 feet. File Resave updates the bill of material. The dummy leg is item. Okay, these item numbers are getting all messed up now. So I can go edit, reset item labels. Okay, so that is M is the elbow, B is the pipe that was used to cut that dummy leg. So it gives the pipe fitter the information he needs to cut that elbow in a way that will fit contour to the bottom of the elbow. So then that would be sitting on steel or something and it would support that end of the piping. I'm going to delete that by clicking F11, delete, and say I wanted a vertical dummy leg or stanchion. Center the dummy leg. Generally be the way you do a vertical one. See, I can just space bar between the two options, shift, enter. Now in this case, I probably want a base plate. So I go inline accessory, end plate. And there I would say, whatever the description is. Okay. Now you have to give some kind of weight. I believe a square foot of 1-inch thick carbon steel plate is 41 pounds. So this isn't going to weigh a lot. Probably a good idea to go on the generous side. Now this dimension here is going to be the thickness of the plate. So you want to put that in there. I've said it's 1/2-inch plate, so here's going to be 0.5. Okay. Add as new description. If I just said accept, it would wipe that out. Add as new description. Puts it in as a, so I'm not wiping out somebody else's description that they might want if they're using the same database. And then accept. Okay. Now I've in words told it that it's square, but you can space bar to make it round or square depending on what choice you wanted. Now I press enter. Now it still hasn't given me a dimension. I've got to click joint before it'll give me a dimension. Now there's a field weld symbol there. Obviously I don't want a field weld there. So I can hold shift, click on that field weld, and this box comes up here. I can click hide weld. This is referring to the weld that's the imaginary weld underneath the plate here, which I'm not going to have. I suppose possibly you could if you're putting an anchor or some kind, but I've never done it in this situation. So then I say done. Resave resets my item numbers, or shows them. Okay, so now here's that base plate that I described. Say there was something I specifically wanted to say about one of these items. I can go Edit Bill of Material. It's got all the items on my bill of material here. I can put in a remark about them. Okay, so you can add comments in there. And when you're happy with that, done. And when I go File, Resave, those comments will come in on shelf in warehouse. Okay, machine from Sked 80 and shop. Okay, maybe just additional information that somebody might need to know. Say I want to put a shoe on here, support shoe. And click on there, attachment, small shoe. Now here you can pick your weld size. Your estimator could probably help you determine what would be a appropriate weld size there. Add as new description, accept. Again, the orientation using spacebar. Now next time I go to add a shoe, the description's already there for me to pick. If I wanted to, I could say, change the height, and then say add as new description. And so it's not wiping out the old description. Now say I want a dimension along here. I want to locate that shoe. I can go dimension miscellaneous. I can just do that to make it look a little prettier if I want. Tools, move tag. Just make it look a little more presentable. Make sure your arrows are close, or your item bubbles are close to the item that they're representing. You see this red circle here? That's warning me that I haven't located that item. A lot of times if commands get hung up, just go File, Resave. It seems to reset something there. I can right click and it'll change the sort of the way that dimension is going to be represented. Okay. Edit, reset item labels. And now I'm going to do edit welds, reset weld tags. If the drawing's never been issued before, you can reset weld tags. If the drawing has already been issued and the QC department's already taken seriously the weld numbers you put on the drawing, then you'd probably use show weld map and it would pick some. If you made a change, it won't overwrite numbers that have been used on welds already. Edit weld tags, or sorry, no, edit welds, reset weld tags. Yes. And then again, you'd move let's do some cosmetic cleanup there. Acorn seems to do a pretty good job of just needs a little tidying up, which is a piece of cake. Once you get the hang of it, it goes pretty good. I don't like where that is, so I'm going to F12. Seems like the bottom left corner seems to kind of select things. And I could also F12 because I need to identify this flange also, right, if I'm doing this. I can F12 that item, put a box around it, edit, copy selection. And I right click here, say paste. If this drawing had perhaps already been issued and I wanted to revise it, I could go edit, or sorry, file, save as, and here I would say new revision. Revision 1. Made it even better. Which is hard to believe that that could be done.